This moment, our world is hurting, suffering, crying out in pain. We can look to the poor parents who had to learn of their children's loss in Buffalo or in Texas. I was reading just today that we seem to be missing count in some ways, or they don't make all the stories. But over this weekend, there was over 10 mass shootings, defined as 4 or more people shot. Not necessarily all killed, but quite the tragedy we have going on in our country. We look to a world where there's so much unrest, greed, and the hunger for power puts country against country and people against people within their own lands. We see and hear, of course, the voices of so many who have lost homes or have been driven from their homes in Ukraine, from those who have lost their loved ones there in the war, including so many Russian families. It's just a tragedy, brokenness. We deal with so many we've lost in the midst of this pandemic, loved ones who have been separated by distance, and those who have lost parents, siblings, and even children. The community, the Jewish faithful that came together and were struggling, much like us, came before their God in question, hurting. Lord, how? Why? If your plan is to bring us together, if your plan is to create a nation, a kingdom, why is there so much unrest, turmoil, and suffering? And they didn't come up with a clear answer, but they accepted in many ways the Spirit alive and work, even before Jesus himself had sent them. The Holy Spirit has been at work since before creation, drawing us closer to God. But they didn't come to a realization like, here's where God is going to make everything right. This is exactly how. But they kept being drawn back to reflecting on who God is. How God, in the midst of creation, created us good. How in the fall, even Adam and Eve, who were driven out, whose their own pride to turn away from God. And God made the promise to them, to Abraham and his descendants. To those who forgot him in Egypt, he sent one to draw them out, to bring them in Exodus to a great nation, to a land to be their own. And even though they grumbled, he nurtured and cared for them. Time and time again, they came to the conclusion, through the influence and the inspiration of the Spirit, that God is ever faithful. And they had to reconcile that with loss and pain and suffering. They believed that the faithful would be forever rewarded. And yet they still suffer, experience sickness and disease. They die at the hands of foes in war. They too suffer all the ailments and pains of this world. And yet they came to this conclusion that despite even death, there would be victory. That they are at peace. They are with the Lord. That God's victory is not defeated by death. And this is before we had Christ, who clearly opened the gates of death and who sent the Spirit to comfort and bring solace, to console those who were wounded and hurting and suffering. And as we lift up in prayer this day all who are struggling, a broken world, we ask this Holy Spirit to make us ever renewed in the confidence of a God that is ever faithful and who cannot be defeated. And may we trust, giving over our life to Him, that each day we live with that faith, we might bear witness to the faithfulness and generosity of our God.